guys, it's April and I garden down in southeast Nebraska, and welcome to 2024. So today I was going to put the new seeds that I got and showed you in the last video away in my seed organization system. And I figured this would be a good time to kind of show you how I organize my seeds and keep track of all of that and how I start to plan out the garden. 2024 is going to be a little bit different because there are some things going on which I will definitely go over, but I will explain all of that as I'm showing you how I do all of this. And I do have a more in-depth seed organization video I believe I did last year around this time, if you want to go and check that out. The system hasn't really changed that much, but I figured I just go in, and for anybody who is still curious on whether or not I kept up with that system, here it is. I do know that it is super popular here on YouTube to use these beautiful, beautiful systems of photo boxes. That's what these are, right? Yes. So all of my seeds are kept in various forms of photo boxes. This is for, I don't know, it's upside down. For all of my flower seeds, I have them labeled on the outside of the boxes so that when I am in the cabinet that I store these in, I can just pull out the box that I need. And each of the internal boxes, let's see if I can get one of these out. I'm doing this the most complicated way possible, but this is how much I like you guys. Each one of these individual boxes has the category of flower that I have decided to categorize each of these in. So this is the nasturtium, not that you can easily read that on camera, but that is what this is. But like I said, I have a full-on video that goes through all of this if you want to see what each of my boxes contains and what those are, because mostly today we're going to be focusing on the food seed, because I've mainly got tomatoes and peppers and things that I need to put back. But that is the flowers. I keep all of my carrots and my carrot tape in these kind of boxes. I do make my own carrot tape, which I'm probably going to do in the next couple of weeks if you want to see how I do that. But once I have the carrot tape made, it goes into this box. But this is the box that holds the free roaming seeds, I guess you can call them. So these are a lot of the carrots that I'm going to be planting this year. My peas and my beans are more in these style boxes because they have bigger containers. So the bigger seeds I had to figure out something to do with because they weren't going to fit all of them in the other photo boxes. So I have this for peas, and then I have this box for beans. I think I can fit one more box in here, so I might go on a hunt to see if I can purchase just a singular box, because I took the dividers out of this one, so the small boxes are a little more loosey-goosey, but that also means I can fit one more in there if I am able to hunt down the exact kind of photo box that is in this bigger box. But that mainly leaves me with the food box. The food box. The food box? I don't even think that's gonna focus correctly. I'm gonna take you over to the table and to a spreadsheet on my computer as I put away these new seeds, and then you can kind of see what's going on inside this box. Ugh. Okay, so here you can see all of the seeds I purchased after my first seed haul. So these are all those specialty tomatoes and peppers and things like that. I need to get them into the proper place over here. I do have a spreadsheet in which I write down everything I have purchased so that I don't forget that I have purchased them and purchased them more than once. And then once I move them over into these seed boxes, they'll go into another tab on the spreadsheet that I'm showing you right now. You can see in my spreadsheet I have a category. Each of those categories in that column connects with one of the boxes in this bigger box. So I have some slicer lights, which are my tomatoes that are big slicer tomatoes, but they're on the lighter side of the color spectrum. And I also have, to counteract that, the slicer darks. So those are the darker tomatoes. And then the snacker tomatoes, or the snackers, those are all the tomatoes that don't necessarily do well for slicing on sandwiches, but will do pretty well in salads or fermenting small cherry tomatoes and things like that. I think I'm gonna start with, say, the light slicers, which is my Rebel Starfighter, my Painted Lady, and my Kaylee Ann. So, got the Rebel Starfighter, we have the Painted Lady, and what did I say? The Kaylee? Yeah, the Kaylee Ann. It's these three right here. I'm gonna open the box. Okay, so this is, I don't know if you can see that right there, my Slicers Light. I used to just have one box of slicers, but because I have so many slicer tomatoes, I had to break it up into two. So I figured a good way to break them up was based on their color. So I do have a lot of light slicers. I think I got more light than I do of the darker varieties, but then I just set them in the box and I call it good. Which leaves the Slicer Dark, which I only have one of those, which is the Marsha's Starfighter. In there. And the rest of these four are all snackers. Here is my snacker container. Probably shouldn't have stacked them quite like that. This is also why I go through my seeds each year and decide if there are some that I no longer wish to grow, because I have limited seed storing space. I could definitely get more if I wanted to, but I like the idea of self-limiting so that I don't have a giant stash of seeds that I don't necessarily use. So limiting myself to only these containers is actually really helpful. We got all of the tomatoes in place. Here we've got just the peppers, and I have broken it down into sweet and hot varieties. It gets a little more complicated when I've got varieties that are supposed to be hot, but they have been unheated. Deheated? They have been sweetened so that they don't have the heat anymore. I do put those ones in the sweet category, so I remember that they're not the full spice level that they could be. But I don't know, at some point I might make a category that is the unhot hot peppers. But for now, this is just how I'm doing it. And I have, oh, I forgot about these ones. The Gin Fizz and the Hot Streak, if I remember right. Those are both light slicers. I'll have to go back and look at that one. But we've got the Orange Lesia, which is a sweet. We've got the second Orange Lesia. And then we've got the Stuffing Scotch, which I am putting in the hot because it still has a little bit of heat, but not the full heat spectrum. And then we've got the Cayenne Sweetness, which I am putting in the sweet because I don't have any other cayenne to get that mixed up with. The Savory Pepper, I am also, I auto-corrected to savory. It's actually Savory Pepper is another one of those peppers like the habanada, so I'm putting it in the sweet. The ahi has a little bit of heat, but not a lot, so that's going in the hot. And then I've got the rest of this Johnny seed order, which we've got some onions and we've got eggplants, so I'll show you where those go as well. I'm gonna really quickly check where the hot streak and the Gen Fizz, I believe they're both in the light slicer, if I remember correctly. Sorry if I make anybody dizzy doing this. Okay. So, yep, we've got the Gen Fizz. And what was the other one? The Gen Fizz and the hot streak. Yeah, the hot streak is right here. So we got the hot streak and the Gen Fizz, both in the light category. What might have happened is because I talked about these 5 Johnny seeds in my first haul, I switched those all over, so I knew I had already talked about them, but the seeds hadn't come in yet, and my system got a little bit confused there. Okay, but we'll go back to this tab, light slicers. Throw them in here real quick. Okay, so for the eggplant, in my mind, an eggplant is a squash. So I have put it in the squash category. So this is the squash box. As you can see, it's getting a little full because squash seeds are fairly big. Ooh. Fairy tales aren't necessarily a squash, are they? So I know eggplant isn't a true squash. It's just where it sits on my culinary palate. So I think for now I'm putting it in the squash. It might end up in, might make more sense in the special box where I've got like the ground cherries and things like that. But here we are. We're putting in squash right now. Let me know down below if you would put eggplants in squash or not. Because I know it's not a squash. It's a nightshade. I don't know why suddenly I'm having an existential crisis about where I'm putting my eggplant. That phrase out of context is probably not good. And then these 2 are my onions. So I have my onion box with all of my other onion seeds. There we go. So then we've got our hot peppers. And then finally we have our sweet peppers. And I did just label them on the rim here and not necessarily on the top because just the way I store them. Don't necessarily need to get overly crazy with my labeling. Okay. So now that that is all the seeds put away, you can kind of see my system here. So just a little peek at my storage box. I'm going to take you over to the spreadsheet so we can get that organized and I can start talking about planning for 2024. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to this bot tab. I'm going to select all of this. We'll come over to this food tab. I'm going to paste it in here. Okay. Now we have the new things added. First step I usually do is I'll sort ascending. And then I'll sort ascending. And now it is in the correct part of the spreadsheet with all the other of its type. And I do keep track of when seeds were purchased and if I've saved them myself, what year they were saved. That is all for this spreadsheet. Then I have this Garden 2024 spreadsheet. So this is a grid of all of the beds that I have. So here you can see some of my first beds that are about 16 foot long but 4 feet wide, and it's divided up because the height varies. And then each of the beds are numbered and mapped out. Right now it's completely blank because I haven't planned anything. But you can see where I've planted the garlic so far. Back in November, I believe I have a video up about this as well, I planted out my garlic underneath my deck. And that is what these beds are. I've got a small bed and a longer bed, and then a fabric pot next to that where I've been planting out various different things for the last 3 years. I've mapped out where each of the garlic varieties are, and I did the garlic there because I am hoping that sometime in the next couple months, these first 5 beds get redone. I have beds that are recycled composite plastics that I got from Frame It All that are just pieces that you construct and build together. You just snap them together. But because I didn't level the ground as I should, they're bowing in certain places. And even if I did level the ground, there is the possibility that the weight of the soil would still make those beds bend. So I've been talking with a couple of contractors and landscapers about how I can build up some beds that'll last me a little bit longer, because I don't necessarily have the skill set to make beds that'll last. I can do a quick and dirty job and I can start growing in them, and that's perfectly fine. Hence what I have been growing in for the last 3 years. But because I've decided that I want to do this gardening thing permanently, this is something I want to keep in my life for a long time, I've been talking to some people who know a little bit more than I do. So I'm actually not going to be planning out a lot of the 2024 garden until I know what the plans for those beds are, because the sizes and the shapes and all of that might change a little bit. And I don't want to get ahead of myself and be like, well, I'm going to put this here and I'm going to put this here if all of this isn't going to be the same. But underneath my deck is definitely going to be the same. So that is why I planted right there. And I could probably plant something in this window bed without much trouble. This will probably be where a lot of my spring stuff gets put. So a lot of my radishes and maybe my snapping peas and those kind of things are going to end up in those deck beds and in that window bed, because I know nothing is going to happen to those. This fire pit section is pots, so I could definitely start some of my spring stuff in those pots. But these are the kinds of things that I'm trying to think about and work around, because I don't I don't necessarily know what is going to be happening the next couple of months. But this layout helps me to kind of visualize where I want to put things out. I have this seed count tab over here. I won't go too in depth into this because I don't know which varieties of tomatoes I want to plant yet. But I will map out all of my tomatoes and all of my peppers to see if I have enough space for everything that I start. So I take into account, does it need a cage? Will it work on my string system? How much room is actually left in beds? There's all kinds of like weird math things that start going on right here. I haven't put anything in here yet. It's like I said, I am a little up in the air about what is happening with my garden right now. But I do have, back in this first spreadsheet, I do have the section of planting dates. This section I have been growing for the last 3 years. where I'm mapping out, okay, when did I start it in 2021? When did I start it in 2022? And when did I start it in 2023? And do I hit those ranges again? Because it seems to be working pretty well. I then have this first column right about here that's averaging out all of the dates so far. So for the lettuce, in 2021, I started it back in March, nearly the end of March. And then in 2022 and 2023, I started it back on February 1st. So it averaged out to about the 1st is when I have been regularly starting my lettuce. I start lettuce that early because I can actually start using it even while it's growing inside, because the guinea pig loves it. We like it for tacos and sandwiches and other things, so it doesn't hurt have it started early. But I just gone down in all of the different categories, figured out when I generally like to start things. And this will be my starting guide for 2024. So what it looks like is starting in February, I need to be thinking about, I don't know if I'm going to do artichoke again. I don't know if I have the space for it, depending on how the garden bed is reworked. Maybe I'll bring the artichokes back. But the lettuce I definitely need to start thinking about, and the onions. And I don't have celery seeds this year because I have so much celery stored up in the freezer right now. I don't think I need to do celery again this year. I might regret that choice, but we'll see. So those are the 3 things that I'm going to be thinking about starting in February. So you'll probably be seeing videos of me starting all 3 of those. This is my starting guide, which started out with this beautiful monster right here. So this is my reference sheet. I have aggregated all of the seed starting information I have found on various parts of the internet. I've got mapped out what my zone is and when my average last frost and first frost are. And then I've gone back to various different websites and figured out when my start dates are. So some of these websites, they have weeks before frost that you need to start the seeds. And so I've mapped out what my date would be according to those, and then when to plant them out after the first frost or after the last frost, and then mapped out what my dates are for those. And then I visually have represented all of that up here. So this is a calendar starting February 1st, going up to at least May. Technically, this is May. This is just August, so I know that I can start some things in August to get maybe a fall planting of things, but mostly May because I use the 13th, which is very close to Mother's Day, but it is my birthday, so it's a date I easily remembered, as an indicator for what generally would be an okay time to start planting out a lot of those things that I would not want to put out because frost. So a lot of my tomatoes and a lot of my peppers I plant out around the 13th of May. So all of this is mapped out backwards from there. This red color indicates hardening off period, where I have to set the plants that I've started inside. And then this light green is go ahead and plant. This purpley color is for starting inside. This is when you should have plants growing inside. And that pink part is the window in which you should be starting those plants. So right here, let's see. This line right about here is my peppers. So around March 10th through the 18th, I should be thinking about starting my peppers sometime in that time window. And then I will be babying them indoors at least until May 1st. In May 1st, I will start hardening them off that week so that sometime after May 13th, I can plant them in the ground. That's how this spreadsheet works. If you see this dark green color, that means I can direct sow something there. So a lot of those things are, say, maybe starting lettuce outside or planting out my carrots or various other herbs that might do okay with a little bit of frost, but not like hard frost. So that is how I generally organize my seeds and how I think about planning for the upcoming year of gardening. 2024 is just a little bit of a mess right now. I will definitely take you on the journey of figuring out what we're doing with those beds and other things like that. So if you want to see those kind of videos, subscribe down below, do all the things to get all the notifications so you can get updates on what is happening with those. And of course, as I said, where would you put eggplants? What section would you put eggplants in? I am now second guessing everything I have been thinking about my eggplants. I mean, I use my eggplants like squashes. I think that's why I put them in the squash category. But I'm definitely open to ideas of where I should keep my eggplant seeds. I do also have a Instagram and Threads account if you want to go follow me over there. Otherwise, I hope I will see you guys in another video, and I heart your beautiful faces.